Hello and welcome to the Matt O'Grady podcast, mattogradycoaching.com, theliving.gratitudebook.com. Today's podcast title is Visualization and Taking Inspired Action Now. So I wanted to do something on visualization because I haven't done it in a while, and I think it's a really important tool that we can use for our lives that often is thought of as, the Olympics just happened, so we're hearing a lot about these champions and how they train, and so much a part of their work is visualizing what they want to do with their physical bodies. And as we continue to understand the science of visualization, because many people still come from the place of thinking that it's airy-fairy, weird, or something like that, and it really is not. I was introduced to this book, Creative Visualization by Shakti Gawain, a couple decades ago, and I was blown away by the book. I really didn't believe it. I was at the very start of my spiritual unfoldment, and I was like, man, this is a great book. If this was true, wow, life would be awesome, because essentially what she's saying is you can invite in any aspect of your life as you visualize about it. And if it's all that simple, why don't we all do it? Why don't we all just visualize and succeed? And of course, like anything worth its salt, it's a little bit more than that, right? There's a craft to it. There's an art to it. There's a practice of it. Like anything that we practice with consciousness and commitment and follow through over a period of time, we're deepening our understanding of it, the physical act of it, if there is a physical act of it, or the internal patterns that we have for something like visualization. So as we understand what it is, it's really important to just step back for a moment and ask ourselves, what is it? So before we even get into exactly how to do it, of course we'll talk about that, but before we go there, let's talk about what it is. Because what it is simply using our imagination focused on visualizing something that we would like to experience. So that's like the most base level, right? And our culture has gotten really clear that desire is okay, and, what we want, what we're passionate about, what we're inspired for, what we think we deserve, what we think will lead us to a fulfilled life, pursuit of happiness and all that is completely okay. So why not use a time-tested champion practice for your own life? Well, that's a question I asked myself after I read that book. And so I started doing it. And I started doing it in really small ways. And frankly, it's taken until, I'd say, the last decade that I've really been honing my practice. Before that, I was kind of dabbling. Every once in a while I'd do it, and I'd get some results. And frankly, sometimes it was a little scary how quickly I could visualize something and it would happen, or some really big aspect. And for a long time, I never even shared with anyone that it occurred, because I felt like, this, is this magic or something? Should I not be messing with this? And I think that's an interesting question, because I think if we're aiming for something that is good for our lives and certainly isn't going to hurt anyone else that we're aware of, then you can be completely clear about it, right? Now, if some action we want to take or some step we want to take, like, for example, leaving a relationship, if we're visualizing doing something like that, we've got to consider all the factors, right? The other people, for one, involved in making a decision like that, and so on. But if we're talking about something like for our career, or something, just an experience we want to have in a relationship, being having a really intimate communication with your partner, or, having the best family weekend ever, or whatever it is that's important to you, in a relationship sense is something you can also visualize, something you can also right? Because we all hope for happiness in our relationships, but are we visualizing them? Interesting. Well, something that I've been doing now over the last decade is just that, and not just with my spouse or my best friends or people I work with. I'm trying to do it in all areas, and I try to think about their highest good and my highest good, and whatever it is that we're doing together, it works out great for both of us. And it really kind of helps me because I'm in the business world, and the whole kind of like hardcore competition thing just doesn't feel right anymore to me. What feels right is really aiming at the absolute best and highest good for all parties that I interact with. My clients, the people that work on my team, myself as one of the people on that team, and how we work together holistically. And so there's so many aspects to it once you really start diving down the rabbit hole, if you will. You can use this in any area of your life, certainly for your health, right? I mean, I think at some point in time or another, everyone is faced with a health issue. And how do you approach it? Is it just, going to the doctor and, taking drugs and getting surgery and or even just taking herbs and doing exercise? Or is it seeing yourself healthy and visualizing how good that could feel? And then training the neurons and the neural pathways within your brain to be thinking about you being healthy. Now, science has begun to prove a lot of these things. So the fact that certain areas of the brain, very specifically, that they're able to track, have very high correlation to specific thoughts that we're thinking, specific feelings that we're feeling. Does any of this sound familiar? Like the whole rest of this podcast, right? Everything I talk about here has so much to do with that. So as we consider visualization, it's really important to remember that we're using our imagination to think about something we would like to experience. That's all it really is. That's my own personal definition. And on the base level, I think it's really important to just see it as that. So an Olympian who's aiming to do whatever gymnastics routine, for example, that they're going to do, they're seeing themselves perform it. And of course, they're not going to see themselves performing it negatively because that's not what they want to occur. And the same thing with our lives. Even though we may not be Olympians, I certainly am not, we can learn from what they use very successfully in their practice for their sport. And I think there's a lot of business people, very successful business people, who use the same technique. And I think there's even great relationship people who have learned the art of relationship is that they expect good things to happen. They are thinking about good things happening. They are visualizing good things happening. They're grateful. They're appreciating the process. And that's how gratitude and appreciation ties into this. Those two practices are really connecting you to the goodness in your life. So as you add in a visualization practice to, if you already have a gratitude and appreciation practice, they go hand in hand. It just feels like it's one of the same whole. You're just kind of experiencing it a little differently when you visualize because you have a specific thing that you're visualizing and it's something having to do with the future. So like I teach people is to be really grateful and appreciate things that haven't happened yet. And people say, what are you talking about? Well, it's from my experiences with visualization, because as we become grateful for something that we hope will occur in the future, as we appreciate that even if we are not ready to be 100% that it's going to happen, you can take a lighter approach. And sometimes the ego needs that, or just, it's a better way to start a new pattern, is to say, wouldn't it be nice? And as we know, Abraham teaches that technique, which is anything that we want, instead of taking this, it's going to happen, we take the approach of, wouldn't it be nice? Because wouldn't it? Isn't that true? Isn't that always true that even if all the data and all of the situational and appearances seem like they're stacked against you, it's still true that it would be nice if whatever you wanted did actually happen. So regardless of appearances, regardless of what other people say, regardless of anything, if you start to visualize what you want and you go in with this approach of being grateful and appreciating the process and really feeling good about what it is you want to experience, I don't think there's any way you can't have success. And the reason why is because you're already being successful in that moment, in the now. Do you see how that works? So as you visualize, you're not just seeing it in your mind. You're feeling it in your heart. You're feeling it in your body. Essentially, you're bringing it into being as if it was happening to you in that moment. And what's so interesting about the human body and how we experience life is, ever have a dream that felt so real, you had no idea you weren't really experiencing what you're experiencing, and your heart beats, the body may sweat, all sorts of endorphins might be released, all sorts of experiences can happen when we're dreaming while we're sleeping. And if we're all really honest with ourselves, some of those feelings happen when we're daydreaming too. Because the truth is, worry, doubt, fear, all of that is just visualizing what we don't want to happen. Yeah, I want a pregnant pause to let that one sink in, because it's the truth. When we're thinking about what we're scared is going to happen, what are you doing? You're either picturing it happen in your mind and then feeling terrible about it. You're complaining about it to someone else, or you're sharing your stress and worry with someone else, therefore building the pattern of that stress and worry in your mind and in your body, and sending out the opposite of those lovely endorphins that are healing all the cells in the body and making you feel good, feel lighter. Instead, negative ions, these kind of scared hormones moving through your body, whether they're adrenaline or some other version of the amazing cornucopia that is the pharmacy within our own bodies. And so as you start to think about how visualization works in your life, why not visualize success? Why not visualize happiness? Why not visualize everything that you've ever wanted and just see what happens? Because doing the practice really only takes a few minutes. I mean, I don't visualize for hours a day. I never have, and I never plan to, because it doesn't seem like you need to. So why would I spend my time doing it unless it just felt great? But you know, it does feel good for me to do it a few minutes a day, but I don't know. I've done it for longer, 15, 20, 25 minutes. I don't know. It was kind of tiring, and just felt like I was repeating the same thing after a while, and wasn't that interesting. So usually when I visualize, it's usually at night, right before bed, because we're trying to make this connection with the subconscious, to really take it deep into the consciousness of our mind, into our being, so to speak, as we drift off to sleep. And I think another great time to do it is right after your gratitude practice in the morning, because you're really juiced up from the gratitude practice. You're feeling good already. Why not start thinking about how you'd like the day to unfold, right? Or this really big goal, and maybe you can take just one more step today. And I just want to take a moment to mention what's also in the title of this is inspired action. So as we visualize, I think it's very important not to only visualize, but to also be sure to be taking inspired action based on what you're visualizing. So here's what I've found in doing this practice, is that we feel really good when we're visualizing. But if we allow weeks, months, and especially years to go by without taking inspired action towards these goals, these aims, these intentions that we have in our lives, there's something missing. There's just something that's out of alignment. So when we take the visualization and we bring our body, mind, and soul to it, when we really follow through physically by making that phone call, doing that research, sending that email, asking that question, deepening our understanding, educating ourselves on what's important to us, and then following through on it in our actual lives in the present moment. So as we do that, everything starts to come together in a way that it wasn't together previously. So it's really becomes a super fun practice. I highly recommend it all across the board here, because taking inspired action is something you can do on any subject in your life at any time. It doesn't have to be just connected to what you're visualizing about. Inspired action is what ends up moving the mountain. You need to have the imagination and the idea and visualize it into being first, right? But then there needs to be, at the end of the day, something that brings it into your manifestational experience. So you may only have to think it or hope it or wish it, and someone else may deliver it right into your lap, right to your front door, right to you while you're in the food store. You just never know. But I find there's just something, I'm a doer, so as much as I like to meditate and visualize and do things like that, I also like to get out into the world and experience life. And my relationships, socially, nature, there's just something really, really beautiful and important about it. And so when I'm taking that kind of inspired action, I'm really juiced up about it. I feel good. I feel like I am following through. I feel like I am doing what I visualized. I feel like I'm taking a step towards my dreams. I feel like this is the right way to go. Whatever it is, I feel in the zone. I feel good. I feel like I'm taking the step. And there's something really important about doing that, being conscious of it in the present moment, stepping back and seeing how the whole picture works together. That this isn't just one thing or the other. It's how each practice, each inner practice, each discovery practice, each awareness practice that we have in our lives is working to support the whole of our lives. And I think when we step back from that, there's almost an awe that can come over me by watching the unfoldment in my own life, and then as I work with coaching clients, as I am friends with people who are doing the same kind of work, and watching them take the courageous, brave steps in their lives, and cheering them on as they're cheering me on, as we're all kind of, supporting each other in love to really be the highest potential we can be in our lives. It has nothing to do with celebrity or accolades or anything like that. Just doing it because it's possible. Who cares if anyone ever really gets to know about it? I don't really care about the celebrity aspect or any of those other things. What I care about is knowing that I gave it my best shot. What I care about is the people I care about most in my life, that I have close relationships with, that they know that I gave it everything I had and that I was doing the best that I could. And I didn't leave anything on the table, so to speak, that could have been a blessing in my life, that could have been a blessing in others' lives that I care deeply about. So I don't know if that kind of driving passion is something that you connect with, but when I work with my coaching clients, we call it the why. It's really important to find out what your whys are and remember them as you're doing them, and to remember them when you're having resistance or fear. Coming back to the why in your life really is powerful fuel. And when you take that, you're visualizing, you're seeing it, you're feeling it, you're doing it, you're experiencing it, you're already experiencing that happiness and success, as you, even though the official achievement may not be right in front of your face just yet, you know it's on its way. Because guess what? You're doing the practice, you're doing the work, you're following through, you have faith. So there's nothing to worry about. The only thing to do is to take each and every next step every day. You wake up, you breathe, you get grounded, grateful, and you take that step, and you just do it. And it's amazing to see how the world embraces you. It doesn't mean that I don't, and all the other teachers who teach this kind of practice don't have problems. Of course we do. God knows I have problems. But it's how I approach those problems that's changing. It's how the relationships are evolving with the people that I'm dealing with those situations with. It's how I walk away from those situations now compared to how I used to walk away. Confused, angry, fearful, whatever it was. And it's just a different way of experiencing life. And for me, it feels way better than the other way that I used to deal with life. So I really wanted to get this out about visualization and taking inspired action in the now, in the present moment, because of how important it is. I'm going to do a whole other podcast subject on this last piece for those of you who hung in to the end. And just so you know, I actually look at the stats. I like to know how many people are listening to the end, because a lot of times I try to save a nugget for those of you who hang out to the end of these podcasts. Not always, but often I try to deliver something really good, and here it is for this podcast. When the small, still voice in you speaks, and you're aware of it, you hear it, it is absolutely important to take inspired action on it right then. I mean, unless you are saving people from a burning building, it is the most important thing to do. Because when you take that action, that inspired action, the message you send into the universe is, I hear your message and I am responding to it with this message. And my message is, yes, I accept it, I believe it, I have faith in it, and I'm following through. And there's something really powerful, really magical, and super beautiful about that process, about taking inspired action when we get the message from our intuition, from our higher self, whatever word you want to call it. I like small, still voice. It just sounds really sacred to me. But when I hear that, and I heard it today, and this podcast is part of it on following through on our visualizations and taking inspired action in the present moment, because I don't know, it just all kind of came to me, and how important it was and how important it is in every project that I'm doing. I have a lot of people ask me, how do you do all the nonprofit work, have a coaching business, run a digital marketing company, be a father, a husband, and, yoga, meditation, qigong, writing articles, podcasts, you're on social media. How do you do all that? And I say, it's really just because I'm so passionate about all of these things, but it's also about walking the talk and seeing that by taking these inspired actions based on what's most important to me, I am creating what I want in those moments. And that really inspires me, that we have the ability to do that, starting with our minds. And we add in our hearts as the motor, as the power behind our dreams. And watch out, stuff's powerful. Be sure you want what you're asking for. I'll also tell you that. But anyway, have a ton of fun. Thanks for listening. I really sincerely appreciate it. The feedback has just been tremendous, and my heart just opens and really loves hearing how much you guys are enjoying the podcast. So thank you. Be well. Take good care of yourselves, and I hope this was helpful. Thank you. Bye.